All right, so this is the video lecture for the last section in the imperialism notes called Imperialism in Southeast Asia. So we've looked at colonization in Africa, in India, and now we're going to look in other parts of Asia. All right, when Europeans came to Southeast Asia, the type of economy that they set up, was a plantation economy where they would have big farms and they'd mass produce like one product. And in Southeast Asia, that product, even though it sounds stereotypical, was actually rice because it works really well, grows really well in that environment. Also, you can see the answer to number 6 here. Why did the Vietnamese resist French occupation? Because the French exported so much rice that peasants had less to eat. So unlike India, where the product they were producing, in this case, does help balance the diet, the British shipped so much of it out to the rest of the world, they didn't leave enough for native Vietnamese people to survive on. All right, if we look at this map, there are several answers to questions here. All right, number 2, the colonial name for Indonesia and its islands, typically Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam, are collectively referred to as Indochina, so that's number 2. All right, number 5 asks you what modern nations were part of French Indochina. Like I said, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, part of Indochina. That's what the area that was Indochina is now Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. All right, and also number 7 here that says what modern day nation remained free? That's Thailand is the modern day nation. The colonial name of Thailand is Siam, so that's the second part of number 7. Thailand and Siam. All right, and then the British also developed this trading post down here on the southern tip of the Malaysian Peninsula because it was really conveniently located for trade, and that was called Singapore. So right there on the tip, as ships were sailing from India to China, they had to pass this location, and the British were able to control trade in that way. Interesting story about Singapore I'll share with you real quick because it reminds me when I was a kid, maybe middle school, I think it was before high school, there was a group of American kids right after they graduated high school. They went on this tour of the world in a sense. One of the places they went to was Singapore, and this became a global, at least national story, international story, because they were doing the stupid college guy thing, and they decided it'd be funny if they vandalized some vehicles. So they spray painted a few things on some cars, thought it was a funny joke, without realizing that in Singapore, that is a very serious offense. And they were caught, they were arrested, and the punishment for vandalism was a beating. They literally have someone who would take a stick and beat you a certain amount of times for that act. And it became a huge deal. And how could they do that to an American? That's abuse. And they were people in America were all upset, like, get that American out of there. He can't be treated that way. They beat him anyway. And so he got the consequence for it, but it's a really good example of how you should act when you go to other countries and be aware of their laws and their rules and their customs. Plus, it relates to this particular colony that was established by the British during the age of imperialism. Michael Fay was the name of that kid. All right, things that the British set up these plantations. This is an example of a rubber plantation. These are trees they would extract the material they would use for rubber. Little known fact, if you ever go to a rubber plantation, you can actually bounce in between each tree like a pinball machine. Actually, I should say, rubber trees are known for their little spikes, so maybe you shouldn't do that. Oh well. All right, so the British, and the French, when they came into this area, this happened a lot as Europeans were colonizing in different parts of the world. They created these work opportunities, like the plantations that were created in Southeast Asia, and a lot of people migrated for work. People are always migrating for work, But imperialism caused new work opportunities in new places. So, like for instance, in Southeast Asia, so many peasants from China migrated to Southeast Asia to work on these plantations and with a possibility of a better life, that they actually changed the demographics of Southeast Asia to be more Chinese than there were native people. So that migration was an effect of imperialism as well. All right, last but not least, let's look at a couple other places in Asia and how they became imperialized. Brief history of the Philippines here. Yeah, the Philippines were colonized by the Spanish in the 1500s and remained until the 1800s. Then the United States got involved when the United States went to war with Spain in the 1800s, and they helped the Filipino people break away from the Spanish. They gave them guns, they gave them supplies, and they really helped them out. And then once the Spanish were defeated in the Spanish-American War and the Philippines became free from the Spanish, the United States decided, now you're our colony. And individuals who they began fighting against the United States. So the United States trained them, like this individual here, Emilio Aguinaldo. He was a Filipino freedom fighter who was trained by the United States to fight against the Spanish. And then once the Spanish-American War was over and the United States didn't leave, they turned and they fought the United States. Get out of our country. And so that was a struggle of imperialism that resulted in the Philippines going from Spanish colony to United States colony. And last but not least, another part here. That's not an answer. This should be 9. Hawaii has an interesting story of imperialism as well. You had Hawaii was a place where American businesses came and they started some very financially advantageous industries like fruit and sugar. And because of the financial success they had, they exerted a lot of influence over the decisions that were made in Hawaii, more so than individuals that were there and those who were supposed to be in charge. So eventually, a woman became Queen Liluakalani, and she tried to take back control of Hawaii to herself, the rightful leader, and Hawaiian people, away from these American businessmen that were influencing Hawaiian decisions so much. But what these businessmen did, so that's one, they intervened. For instance, if you ever heard of the Dole Company, that was the fruit company that existed there, and they took over the government. They kind of put the Queen on house arrest. And then they reached out to the United States, part 3 here, and they asked the United States to add Hawaii. And so the United States annexed Hawaii, which is adding it to their territory. That's what annex means. And Hawaii became a state in the United States. So therefore, it was under the government of the United States, no longer under the government of Hawaii or Hawaiians. So American businessmen sort of ripped Hawaii away from the Hawaiian people and added it forcibly to the United States so that they could protect their own business interests, essentially is what happened. So this is disturbing and it's unfortunate, probably not unfortunate enough to stop Americans from going to Hawaii or taking advantage of that really nice pineapple whip that Dole makes you can get in Hawaii or at Disneyland. But maybe you'll throw away the last bite of it if you get it in respect for the imperialistic work that the Dole Company did in Hawaii. And here's the Queen, Liluakalani. So the United States was even involved in imperialism during this time as well.